Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But today we are sobbing through the finale.
Today we're not talking. We're crying.
We're just crying and crying and crying because that's what I did while I read this book. My partner thought I was unwell.
Gosh. Do you now realize how hard it was for me in the last episode to like keep it together and just be like, I was biting my tongue so hard because this book is devastating.
I know. Yeah, it was devastating. But before we
Fonda
get into
Lee,
the sadness,
you are in big trouble for
Fonda
doing
Lee,
this to us.
How dare you? Please raise your hand if you've ever been victimized by Fonda Lee.
Everyone's raising their hands.
The world is right now. You guys all better be raising your hands right now. Be honest.
I'm pretty sure like one of the reviews of Jade Legacy was like, how dare you? I relate so strongly to that. And it was a 5-star review.
Oh, yeah.
So
how could it not be? I'm so confused.
Let me find it here because I'm pretty sure it was like right at the top, but it was like, how dare you?
How dare you?
This one says, I'm going to need a personal apology from Fonda Lee.
That's amazing. I just love all the 5 stars. 5 stars. It got 5 stars. Like,
how dare you? 5 stars.
How dare you, Fonda Lee? But
5 stars. Grieving. No one talked to me. No one touched me. Why are people so clever?
I had to read this also while PMSing. So it was so upsetting.
Not a great time.
I had a moment, Laura, like many people who have uteruses will commiserate. I had a moment where Friday I came home and I was screaming about my awful day and I was so upset, and then I started sobbing, and later the next day I got cramps and I was like, oh thank God. You have that moment where you're like, I don't know why I'm acting this way, it was just kind of a bad day, and then you're like, oh thank God, I know why.
Sometimes I also get a feeling like once you realize, oh, it was my period, you also get this feeling of, dang it, I'm living in just a stereotype.
Here's the thing. All I did was cry and yell at my boyfriend a little bit, but like not yell at him, but I was yelling about the day around him. So even if it's like technically a stereotype, it's like women can still keep it contained. Like I didn't yell at anyone at work. Like I'm
raging out, like
like driving along the road. Like I just got really upset and really sad in my own home where I was safe to do so. So
do you remember when this was a while back, but I'm pretty sure Amy Poehler was still on SNL at the time, but they had one of those fake commercial skits that they made for a period, like a birth control pill that you only got your period once per year. And it was called Annual, which was the funniest thing to me.
Annual.
Yeah, everyone go look this up on YouTube because it's a very funny fake commercial. But it was hilarious to me because they played it exactly like a period, like a birth control or tampon commercial would be, where it's just like women that are like, I don't mind getting my period. Or in this case, it was like, period kind of takes away from my day. I don't have time for that right now. And so then they were describing this birth control pill where you only get your period once per year. But then they say, but when it comes, hold on to your freaking hat. And then it shows these people raging out. Like I'm pretty sure I'm remembering Amy Poehler like leaning back like with an axe in her hand, like because the once per year period was so terrible.
Speaking of like random stuff, not to get on this topic, so sorry all you people who come in and are like, we're gonna listen to a nice book podcast. Well, like, it's what I just found out from TikTok today or like yesterday. I told my partner's sister, we were both flabbergasted. So for the longest time, feminine products were tested with saline instead of any other mixture that actually resembles what it's supposed to be used for feminine hygiene products. guess when the study came out that was like, hey, we probably shouldn't use saline because all of these are too similar. Like it's not similar enough to actual menstruation. Guess the year.
2012.
2023. So this year,
I gave us too much credit.
I also guessed 2012. Like, I also was like, oh, 2012. Like it's really late in the game, but like you're still good. And it's like, oh no, it was this year that people were like, maybe we shouldn't use saline anymore for like.
It looks like they use laundry detergent in the commercials that they have on TV.
Isn't it like, didn't they talk about that on the Bechtel cast where they were
it's
like, I don't bleed blue. Why can't you make it look at least a little like blood? Like you can never pretend that that's what's coming out of you.
And I get it that it's gross and everything. So they're trying to make it look like clean and all this and still show like, oh, it can hold all this fluid. And it's like, yeah, you're lying.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is they were lying because they were using saline.
Yeah, which is very thin, and that is not accurate. Sorry, people who don't want to hear about this and have never experienced this, but it's not that thin, and ew.
But yeah, so anyway, I just don't trust medical doctors anymore.
It's kind of like, I'm sure this is also the issue with those type of products, those hygiene products, where if you have seen, I'm going to give a mild spoiler for the Barbie movie. If you've seen the Barbie movie, all the people in charge of Barbies are not women.
Women, shockingly enough.
It's an entire room of men, and they all know what's best for Barbie. But I'm guessing, just guessing, that probably for a really, really long time, the people in charge of making and also doing research and creating the ads for these hygienic products were probably people that never had a period.
Probably not. And then they were like, hey, saline's similar, right? It's like that blue dye we see in the commercials. Clean. It looks cleaner that way. But Laura, getting off of random tangents onto a hygiene feminine
this
products.
Is the period 5 podcast. Minutes into
this is the period podcast. Period. Laura, what are you
Annual.
What are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I read volume 2 of Spy Family, and I really like this manga. It's so cute. I haven't read a lot, but I've been able to kind of squeak in a manga here or there, and I've just been reading like Witch Hat Atelier and Spy Family. But Spy Family, they need to, like, these hold lines need to slow down because everyone wants this book from the library, these books from the library, and now I have to wait again a long time to get another one, and I'm sad because I just want to binge it. But it's really cute. I think I'm gonna have to watch the show eventually.
Okay.
But highly recommend. And then Witch Hat Atelier, I've talked about that before. Highly recommend.
Laura's just having a good time, y'all.
I don't have, it's been really busy a couple weeks for you and I both.
Yeah.
And so I have read some other things, but I don't want to mention them just yet, just because we've got some exciting stuff planned and we'll be talking about them later on down the line. So I'm not going to mention those at this point, but I have been watching Claim to Fame still on
how's it been going?
ABC.
I get live updates about how much Laura can't believe no one recognizes Donny Osmond's son.
Maybe I am just like too big of a Donny Osmond fan. I think that's it. I think that's the issue here. So Donny Osmond was a child, like teen star in the 70s. And he was famous for like the song Puppy Love. And then he sang with the Osmonds. They were a big family because they're Mormons.
Country.
Yeah. Donnie and Marie, they were very popular. They kind of broke off in this. Donnie kind of broke off in a similar way to Michael Jackson breaking off from the Jackson 5 because the Osmonds always performed together. And then Donnie broke off and became kind of a sensation on his own. And he and Marie sang together for a while. But Donnie is well known for his singing, and he also portrayed Joseph in the musical Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat on Broadway for a while.
My colored coat, my amazing colored coat. Sorry.
I thought you were going to sing the one that I always like think of is the Potiphar scene.
Potiphar had married
few casts.
He was one of Egypt's billionaires, having made a fortune buying shares in pyramids.
And so I know Donnie from these things. He's also has had a Vegas residency for a really long time. Most recently, he was on The Masked Singer. I think I wrote Donnie's Wikipedia page. I'm pretty sure.
Guys, she's forgetting about one of his biggest claims to fame,
which is
get down to business.
Yes, he provided the voice of probably one of the greatest Disney songs, I'll Make a Man Out of You from Mulan. That is Donny Osmond singing. Actually, B.D. Wong is the voice of Shang-Li, the speaking voice. So Donnie just provides the singing voice. Yes. But it's a fabulous song. If anyone wants any tips on like enunciation and singing, listen to that song because it's phenomenal. I listen to it a couple times a week just because I love it so much.
Because she's writing Donny Osmond's Wikipedia page.
Yes, I am the writer of Donny Osmond's Wikipedia page. So after I've gone into this in-depth analysis of Donnie, so anyways, his son Chris is on this show, and Chris looks so similar to Donnie. I had to send Hannah a picture because I was like, don't they look so similar? And I can't get over it that all the other people on this show, they cannot figure out who Chris is. And Chris is very good on this show because they're starting to figure him out because he's very good at playing people against each other, where he'll say, oh, well, I'll provide you this clue if you give one to me. Or do you really think that that's who that is? And he's so good on this show because he is able to keep secrets and also make alliances through kind of sneaky ways. But now the other contestants are catching on to him. The problem is they keep trying to get him out, but they do not have a clue who he is. And I'm going to watch the episode tomorrow because I watch him the next day on Hulu, but I'm honestly going to be shocked if they figure out who he is because they have been so off so far. They've thought Jim Carrey, they've thought Elton John, and I don't know why they thought Elton John was born in Utah. I think people on this show are too young.
Yeah.
They just don't know some of these celebrities because of their age, and most of the people are like 20s and 30s, and I just think maybe Chris will win the show because nobody's able to figure out who he is, which is mind-blowing.
Fascinating.
The other one that I think is like a really fun person on this show is Nick Cannon's brother, and everyone thinks that he is related to Marshawn Lynch because they have similar hair.
That's sure.
They all keep saying like he's definitely related to an NFL player. He's definitely related to an NFL player, and they couldn't figure out his clue for who his celebrity relative was. Let me just tell you the clue, Hannah. It was 12 babies, and then a microphone, which he is the host of The Masked Singer.
Yes, he is.
And then drumsticks because he was in the movie Drumline. So I thought that was extremely obvious as far as clues go, because 12 babies. Who has had 12 babies recently? Nick Cannon.
Yeah.
So that also kind of surprises me that so far they have not been able to figure out who this brother is. But and maybe if I were on this show, I would not be able to guess these things as easily as I think I'm able to. It's kind of the Jeopardy effect when you're watching the show. You're like, I get all these right. Versus when you're in the situation, you're like, I got all these wrong. So who knows? But I feel like some of these I probably could have figured out. And I'm baffled that these people do not know some. And maybe I just know too much about celebrities. Maybe that's what I'm coming to the conclusion of. I've read too many People magazines. I know too much about celebrities.
Again, I'm a big believer in like self-selection. So you have to realize that you're digging from a very specific pool of people who are like tangentially related to famous people, but like actually would sign up for this show. So like that is a very specific like overlap of people. And are those people going to be like obsessed with celebrities or be a bit like, I'm in my own little world? Like, you know, like
I feel like several of them are likely on this show just to like get a little fame themselves, because like the whole Tom Hanks's niece meltdown and screaming, I should have had more airtime. Obviously, she just wanted to get a little fame, and she did, but not in a good way.
Not in a good
way. I think a lot of them kind of do it just for their 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, I would agree
but
with that.
Some of them, I think, maybe are doing it to get some money to give to charity, I would guess.
That's good. Yeah, I guess it all depends. I don't know.
The winner of the last season, I really liked. It was Keke Palmer's sister, Elsie.
Right. I remember that was a good one.
Yeah, she was great. So I was so glad that she won. And she was just like a really likable player. But this season, I'm just astounded that no one knows who Donny Osmond is, and also that the other contestants thought that Elton John was born in Utah.
Gosh, I cannot.
Which makes me question, as a huge Elton John fan, I'm questioning, do they know that he is British?
I don't think they do, Laura.
Oh my.
That's oh my gosh, what's the movie where someone is like, hey, you look just like Elton John? And
Hannah, that's like, the Country Bears.
Oh my God, that's what I was thinking of. Laura, you did this to me.
Yes, all of my favorite things are coming together. Elton John, Disney, the Country Bears.
It's like, what's
so perfect. Tricking Hannah. I've tricked Hannah into bringing the Country Bears movie into her daily life.
I'm so upset with myself right now. I was like, I feel like I watched that recently. It was the Country Bears.
You did watch it.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And if you want to join in on some fun watch parties, we had that on Patreon, and I'd love to do another watch party soon in the future.
Well, I think we should do, because I know that we're not talking about SAG-AFTRA things, but something that's tangential, we won't bring it up too much, but Laura has started her watch of Doctor Who, and if they start paying their workers fairly, we can all talk about it. But we should definitely have a watch party with some like earlier Doctor Who shows, and like have people like, maybe we'll watch like the first episode and the finale and give people time to watch all the different other episodes, and then it's like special episodes we can all watch together and everything.
I will say, going through the first series, things are wild, but I can't look away.
It's a wild first, like you're just watching and you're like, oh, that's a layer of skin.
What?
I can't wait for your full journey. I need to catch up, but no, we're not talking.
I'm almost done with the first series, so
I'm excited.
Okay, Hannah, what have you been reading and watching and enjoying?
Okay, well, first off, we're gonna go over some of Hannah's like. So I read this book that was part of the big library read, which I think is done through Libby, and it's like everyone reads a book and then they discuss it. And I don't know how it became on my radar. I think it was just because they had so many copies that people were like, offer it, download it now.
Yeah, they offer it to people, because I did this a couple years ago for one of their reads, and I did not enjoy the book. It was a self-help book. It was
fucking terrible, Laura. I'm sorry for cursing, but like it's called A Very Typical Family by Sierra Godfrey, and it is horrible. Like I did not understand why this was chosen to discuss at all. Besides mostly white women get on to discuss this book, because like it was asinine. It's all about this woman who like her mom was neglectful, which you think they would deal with that in the book, but they don't. And she like the mom was raising the kids and they were all angry after their dad died. They really go into any of the deep-seated like resentments they have for the mom? Barely. The mom's dead by the time of the opening of the book. And like she has to be at the house with her siblings in order to inherit the home, their family home, which is like this very nice and expensive home. So she like wants to do it. So she has to take a sabbatical from work. Her boyfriend just like got picked over from her for a promotion when she was like, I've been at the company this entire time, and he knew he was getting this promotion, and you know, and it's like, he's literally more qualified than you. Like you were in like one of the like lower end stuff. And so there was never, I hate this in like modern day books where I'm like, people actually know how some businesses work nowadays, where she never interviewed for the job. She never talked to the boss about the job. She just thought she would be handed a promotion and it would be announced at work one day.
Okay.
That's not how any of that works. Like, you have to sign paperwork.
I mean, it's never worked like that for me, but maybe other people are.
So anyway, her boyfriend gets the promotion. It's like her best friend's brother. She like leaves him for a little bit. They go on a quote unquote break. She like goes back to the house, and then you find out that like she didn't expect her siblings to be there because like, I'm gonna ruin this book because I think it's a bad book and it gives really weird messaging. So skip ahead if you guys don't want to hear plot spoilers for a very typical family. But we literally like so you find out in the book that like her brother was into hard drugs, which like fine, whatever, you're in high school, you make or he was in college. And so was their sister. And so one night she comes home and like the sister and her get into a tiff because like the sister's making fun of her for her high school boyfriend. It's like her graduation, and they get into a fight, and the youngest sister pushes the sister who's like high and hits her head and is bleeding everywhere. And so the girl freaks out and calls the cops. And one of their friends hears the cops is coming and then like shoots himself up and overdoses and dies because the cops are coming. And so then the brother and sister get arrested for manslaughter because they provided the drugs to this kid. And somehow she gets blamed for all of it. Like, everyone is like,
why?
Right? Does that get answered? No, not really. Like, at one point the brother's like, well, you know, I was really mad at you for a long time, but and like you did me wrong, but it's fine now. And it's like, well, it sounds like she was 17 and worried that your sister was dying. And then through a very weird set of events, all of that happened. Like, it was so bizarre and it didn't make sense. And then she has like this forced love interest who's like her brother's coworker, and her brother's missing throughout the entire novel, but like, don't worry, don't call the cops. And it's like, but he's literally missing in this book. And it's just like, it's the wildest, like let's find, like, turn back time and find our family again. And like, it was just the most bizarre book. Like, she didn't really like her job, but she was so mad she didn't get the promotion. And like, none of it made sense. None of it made sense. I did not like this book. It was terrible, Laura. It was so bad. I don't understand why anyone like read this and was like, you know who needs to read this? Everyone on Libby.
Here's my thing. So many of these book club books are terrible.
Yeah. And
the way that people eat them up and are just like, oh, I love this one. And I'm like, really? But have you read a good book? Like,
well, and again, sometimes I feel like it's like the white womanification where it's like, oh, let's read about this girl who sent her family to prison. And we all know prison is bad. And it's like, we know prison is bad because statistically it affects non-white people at worse rates and is worse for people who are not white. But you still wanted to tell this story about white people who got arrested, and like, one of them is still able to get his doctorate, but then they're like, yeah, but you really ruined his life because it was on his criminal record. And I was like, okay, I totally get it. He was selling hard drugs, like, not to like shame on anyone's journey. And he was a child in the like loosest sense of the word, because he was like 20, I think, when it happened. So obviously people make stupid mistakes, but like the way they treat it, like, she definitely caused them, like, force them to sell drugs and then force them into prison. It was baffling and it did not make sense. Yeah, so I hated that book.
That sounds terrible.
It was really bad. And then
I would say, just going on a brief aside, you mentioning like people being in prison. There was a creator that I found on Instagram. I will find the name, but I find him really interesting. I've watched several of his videos, but he was in prison for some actions that he took as like a 19-year-old or something, and was in prison for quite a long time, and then ended up getting out of prison and is now like documenting like his journey. And he talks a lot about like things that he can and can't do. And I find it fascinating because these are things that I don't really know about. Like, you would know more about them because you went to law school. Right. And so I just don't know these things. So it's fascinating to me to hear this person's story and him be like, oh, well, yeah, I can't actually do that. And I kind of wish that I was able to have that, not just because I need this, but because it's like a right that other people have and I don't get it. So that sucks. So I find his content to be very interesting. I will find the name and we can add it into the episode notes.
Check out the episode notes, everyone. No, and I do think like obviously I think rehabilitation matters. I think rehabilitation should be the main focus.
Yeah.
Like obviously I'm not sitting there being
I'm not
like,
putting words, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just think that this creator is really good.
There have been discussions on like people who pull themselves up with their bootstraps, learn a ton about the law from their time in prison, and then they get out and they cannot attend law school because of their prior bad acts, even though they are fully rehabilitated. And then you see rich people or Supreme Court justices having ethical violations and nothing happens to them. It's because of socioeconomic issues at all levels. And that is a huge problem. And, you know, that's another thing where it's like, I felt this book was a little bit disingenuous because it was like, well, look at even bad stuff can happen to white people. And I'm like, yeah, but also like, you had to make it bad enough, and then you had to jump through all of these hoops to make the siblings super forgiving. And that's just not quite hitting. And it doesn't do what you think it does. Like it's actually like it's kind of in my opinion, it's a little insulting when that's not what typically happens. And certain people can tap out of a book. Like I understand if you have a great book idea, you don't need to jump through that many hoops to make the siblings good people, then like you can make them be somewhat bad people who still blame the sister or do that storyline or do something a little bit more complicated. But it had this shiny happy edge to it that just
icky.
It was icky. And then like they barely touched on stuff like the mom in the book was lying about how much she talked to the other ones because she like went and talked to the youngest after it happened, sent her away to college, and was like, I don't think it's good for you to come home. And then like also was trying to teach the brother and sister like, oh, she's doing such an amazing job. And so she was like, obviously, like that's technically a little bit abusive to like pit them against each other and to speak to them like that. And then in the end,
it's
like
definitely manipulative.
They talk to her like their stepdad or like the guy who like came into their lives later in life, and he was like, well, she was a complicated woman. And I'm like, well, you did too many things, pick two things, like come on. So it was very rude, and I just didn't like it at all. On the other side of things, and this was an audiobook, thank God. I didn't have to like I started it and I like wanted to stop, and then I was like, I don't know, it's an audiobook. Like it passes the time.
You're like, well, I guess I'm too far into this now.
I guess I'm gonna waste 6 hours of my life on this book.
Have you ever gotten into an audiobook and you're like, I just don't like it, but yep, here we are? Because that happens to me where if I'm within like the first chapter and I'm not feeling it, I'm like, okay, I can quit. I will quit audiobooks more quickly than I will quit a physical or ebook, just because if the narrator's not working for me, I can't do it.
I usually will force my way through an audiobook and be like, you know what? I'll just pass the time. I actually just put one down. I really loved the book, The Rosie Project. Okay. I read it back in 2016, so I don't know quite what it's like reading through a 2023 lens. Like that is, 7 years of time. And I started the sequel because I was like, oh, I'll download that on an audiobook. No, it was horribly like, it is about someone who is autistic. He is some level of autistic. But like, and so part of it, I was like, I could see where you wrote yourself into this hole where like in the first book, he was obsessed with people's BMIs. But listening to him talk about like BMIs and how they're like, oh, that woman is obviously overweight because it's not her BMI. And I was like, okay, listen, if you're on the autism spectrum, like you could probably research that BMI. Like this is a scientist who's obsessed with learning everything. And it's like, well, you could probably learn that the BMI is a broken system. And this person didn't do that and just like continued being horribly fat phobic. And then there's certain book, like part of the charm of these books is it's someone who is like walking into situations who doesn't quite know how to read the room. And then he gets himself into messes, but through being a good friend and a kind person and having the right community, he usually perseveres. I DNF'd because a social worker who meets him out at a bar and doesn't like how he's talking because he orders mahi mahi or something, or he orders something where his wife doesn't support like violent like fish things,
the practices.
The practices. And so he orders it, and the woman at the table is like, don't you know that they're violent practices, and like da. And he's like, yeah, but like I wanted to try it because my wife doesn't approve it, so I ordered it here because she's not here. And the woman was like, ah. And so then he orders something else that's offensive, and she's like, you don't even know what you're doing. And she like blows up on him for being autistic, and says, I hope you never procreate. And then he runs into him because through a very like fun situation, his friend tells him to watch children in a park, monitor them because his wife is pregnant and he's nervous. And like the friend does it as a passing joke, but then he goes and he starts recording children and he gets arrested because he doesn't understand like that's bad. And I was also like, okay, in what world does this make sense? But like, fine, if we're going through the logical steps of that. He has to go to a doctor's appointment where he talks to a psychologist who's like, oh, you're obviously in the clear. It seems like the police overreacted because you weren't like they didn't think you were respecting them enough. And like even the police chief, after they questioned him, he came in and he was like, oh, I totally understand what you're saying. Like, please don't do that again. We're going to have you do a psych eval to like, because it's already in the system. But once you go, they'll totally take it off your record, He runs into the social worker who finds out his wife is pregnant and decides to open an investigation into him, even though she has a prior relationship with him. And I immediately was like, nope, I'm not reading this novel anymore. That's horribly offensive. It's horribly unethical. And to pretend that like, and like she says awful things to him in the interview where she's like, your wife is like on the edge. Your wife is an overachiever. And the fact that she has to take care of you and a baby means she's going to suffer a breakdown. And I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding. I'm sorry. This is horrible. And I just like walked away.
Yeah. Understandable.
And like, obviously I don't know anything about this author, or like I'd have to look into it, but like, it wasn't a fun, bright read at that point. Like about like, oh, it's such a zany conversation. I'm like, no, this is an unethical and dangerous situation for the main character. And I'm not, and apparently like by the end of the book, she's like, oops, sorry. I just didn't know the facts. And I'm like, no, you should be fired. Like, you are dangerous to people. Like, I was floored. I walked away from it. I was like, there's no possible way. Like, I'm not doing
I often get frustrated with books where authors will try to do something like that, where they're like, oh, this character had a awakening and now is sorry for what they did. And there's no consequences. They said they're sorry and we moved on. And it's like you said, like, no, they should have been fired. Like that was incredibly inappropriate and should not have been said. And I kind of wish that more books would do things like that. The authors would be a little bit more realistic, or a little bit. I don't want to say honest, but I feel like that's the only word that I can think of where it's like, if you're being honest, that is like a wholesome apology is not what would happen in the real world, and it is not what should happen in the real world. What you need to see is like someone getting fired because
like, well, and even in the interview he's like, oh, hi Michelle, and she's like, please do not discuss that we have a prior relationship. And I'm like, you're not supposed to be in the room with that person. You can call someone else in to investigate, but you should not be in that room. What the hell are you talking about? Like, I was horrified. And so immediately, no, I thought Rosie Project was a very cute book when it came out. So I don't know. I haven't reread it. Apparently it will be fat phobic because that was definitely a holdover from the last one, his obsession with BMI. But it's fine. That's the sucky part where you're like, well, it was a different time when these books came out, and you're just like,
which is mind-blowing, like 2016 being like such a different time. It's so weird to think about, like, oh yeah, the lens that we look through things, we can say, oh, well, that was a 2016 lens, because I'm still like looking at things where I'm like, well, that was a 2008 lens, so I guess we'll be a little more forgiving of that. Or, well, this came out in the 90s and it held up pretty well. So now the fact that we're at a point where we're like, well, that was 2016.
It just didn't age well. And like that's also like as someone who has worked as a civil servant, I was horrified. I didn't like it. No, thank you. And immediately shut it down. So
yeah, don't blame you.
And other things, I continued on with one of my favorite new genres that I didn't realize I was so obsessed with, but Native Indian horror books.
Oh yeah, because you read that Stephen Graham Jones book, right?
Yes. And then I have another one of his. I also liked Winter Counts, which isn't exactly horror. And then there was another one, I forget what it was called, but it was like similarly like psychological. But I just read White Horse by Erica T. Worth.
Okay.
And it's about a woman who is Native Indian, and she like for her entire life thought her mother deserted her on the second day on her like the second day she was after her birth. Like she thought she was a 2-day-old baby and she disappeared. She had a very close relationship with her father, but he was in a car accident that left him brain damaged and unable to speak and like interact with her. And then she gets this bracelet that belonged to her mother, and she accidentally calls up her mother's ghost into like and a monstrous entity that starts like kind of stalking her and getting her to realize that her mother was murdered, and trying to like dig deep into what's going on and what happened. And through it all, she like looks into the dark secrets of her family, the dark secrets that like have her cousin has a husband who is derailing into a very abusive relationship, a very controlling relationship. And like it's very complicated, it's very interesting. And you know, she has a very hard life, and you know, a lot of you know, horrible things have happened to her, and her trying to overcome them and realize that like some of the harm she's done to the people she loved while trying to forgive the memory of her mother and help put her mother to rest. It was very good. I liked it a lot.
Sounds good.
Everyone put it on their TBRs because out of the 3 books that Hannah ranted it was so good. I really liked it. I really liked it in audiobook format because I realized like I'm a little bit less afraid of ghosts in audiobook format.
Well, I was gonna say that I'm surprised that you're hitting up another ghost story.
No, I think I'm slowly coming to the realization that somehow in my older age I'm becoming less afraid of ghosts. Like something, and it's like, oh, that's a little bit sad because like younger Hannah let this hold. I don't think I'm signing up to watch The Exorcist or The Shining anytime soon, but like I have become a little bit more jaded when it comes to ghosts as time goes on, where I can read about them, and I think I can. So far, I've been able to put the context on like this is a story. It's not like something that could happen to me tonight, which is usually where my fears were, where I was like, I don't want to see a ghost tonight. But yeah, I still have those moments where I get like freaked out. Like I was watching a mystery show last night, and this morning when I was walking down my hallway, I was like, I'm a little afraid. Should I turn on the lights? And I'm like, Hannah, it's like 5:45 in the morning. You're fine, you know? But I just found out that
turn the lights on.
I'm a little bit more paranoid, but I've been able to do a few more of the like ghosts and books and stuff. Cool. So that's been fun. But this book was really good. Yes, so I really enjoyed the author. It was her debut novel. Yeah, and everyone should go get it. I don't think I knew what to expect because I'd seen the cover a lot of times, and I don't think I was expecting this. I definitely just sometimes pick up books by their cover, and then I'll start reading.
Always do that.
I'm like, oh, I didn't know this was about that. Like, I think when I picked it up, I've been trying to be more mindful of making sure I'm reading authors of color via audiobook. And I was like, oh, maybe I should wait for this one. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, it's by an Indigenous author. Like, awesome. Thank you. Because I definitely thought it was by a white man based on the cover. It's just like, it's the face of a woman in sunglasses with like sharp bangs. And for some reason I was like, a white man wrote that book. And then I was like, oh no, it was definitely an Indigenous woman. So that's awesome. But yeah, very good. Getting ready for spooky season, add it to your list. And then for watching, Laura, did we talk about it? But I watched the Duggar documentary. Yeah, so I watched that and it was bad. I mean, it was scary. Like I didn't like it.
I watched it pretty soon after it had come out. And I think I messaged you about it.
Oh yeah.
But like none of it was that shocking to me, which is sad. But at the same time, it's still like the thing that shocks me, I guess, is how people continue to just be fed this stuff and go along with it. I think is what shocks me the most, because they're, and when I say people are being fed this stuff and continue to go along with it, I'm thinking of the matriarch and patriarch of that Duggar family and how they were fed a certain narrative and how they did a lot of harmful things and covered up a lot of harmful things that happened, and they continue to try, and I don't.
It was, I mean, it was particularly, I knew a lot about like the Duggar family based on the religion that they're based in, which is making sure you have so many children that you have warriors of God. I
didn't know anything about that.
So the Duggar family, for people who don't know, it was a TLC show while we were in high school that people were obsessed with, called
19 Kids and Counting.
It was 17 Kids and Counting when it originally started, and then it got up to 19 as the years went on.
They continued to have more kids. I remember this show, like them talking about how the older kids would take care of the younger kids. They were all assigned an older kid, a buddy, to take care of them, and it was kind of portrayed as like they were a very wholesome family, and look at how organized they are and how they all help each other out. But as time went on, you found out that there was a lot of things going on that were terrible.
And like it was just like, it was based, they were a very religious family that wasn't really as touched on in the TLC show, but they did touch on it in some ways. I remember in high school, people were obsessed with talking about the oldest son who was engaged, and he and his fiance could not kiss until the wedding night, until they were married, and so they would hold hands. And a lot of my friends
and they could only do like side hugs and stuff like that. I don't remember ever talking about this show with anyone.
Oh, all of my friends were, well, I went to a Catholic school, so all of my friends were obsessed with it in like a tangential religious way, where like religion was baked into our whole identities. And so my friends would often joke, because I never watched this show, they joked about how their hugs or their hand holding was like so horny because they couldn't do anything else. And so they were like, they're just trying to like claw at each other's hands the whole time. And they're just like, just make out. Like, who cares? And so like,
there's camera crews following them around, and their mom and dad are standing like 2 feet away.
And they always had to have a chaperone. They could not be near each other. They could not have and so you found out later on that the oldest brother, trigger warnings, but he was molesting some people within their community and his siblings. I will give the documentary, I hope that what was shown is reflected in what actually happened, but one of his sisters was part of the documentary, and she asked not to speak on it, and she said like it was very difficult as someone who was harmed by it, and she just didn't like the way it was portrayed because she was one of the victims, and she didn't like how her story was told, or that it was forced to be told. You can tell that she has a lot of complex feelings about it. And the documentary,
I do think that was handled. Yeah, I do think that was handled pretty well, because she makes a lot of good points about how people were literally taking a traumatic experience that happened to her and just using it to plaster all over tabloids and make money off of.
Exactly. So she asked to not speak on it and the documentary, and they didn't make her. And then they did have one of the other victims' parents on. I believe that was the case. And they did speak, but they spoke for their daughter, and they didn't force their daughter to make a statement. And, but like even in like the best light, where they have this one couple sit down, and it was like, yeah, I was 19 when I met her and she was 15. Ha ha ha. And it's like, no.
Well, and I think if I'm remembering right, there was some news that came out like shortly after the documentary was released about that couple, and I don't know that they are doing the best.
Oh, okay, well, good, awesome. But so it was very upsetting. And then you also find out that like, I think some of the religion like lets people feel different ways about religions. This religion had a lot of issues coming out of it that arose in the documentary, especially with the founding member. And then towards the end, you also find out that like the dad pretty much took all the money from all the children making this series.
Yep.
And he's like, well, I am the head of the family, so it is my money. So why would I pay you guys, and had them sign paperwork when they didn't understand what it meant, was not working in their best interest. And like, that's just, it's predatory. A lot of stuff has been coming out more and more about children who have been in the spotlight their entire lives. And this is just one of the extensions of that. So it's a fascinating documentary for those who want to watch it. But yeah, it was pretty horrifying. I knew a lot of it. I didn't know as much about the scandals within the church, but I knew about the extension because I have had friends who now work in social work that is directed towards people in oppressive religious homes who are, you know, members of the LGBTQIA plus community and like have the need to get out of there. So it's a scary thing to talk to people who have suffered through that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really kind of a hard thing to watch, but like I said, none of it is that shocking to me.
Yeah. So I was raised in a very Catholic home. I think that lots of religions have benefits to them. I think lots of them have negatives to them. This is one of the more negative ones. And just like, I think there's a certain danger in things like this where you hold everything to your identity, and it's always good to hold a mirror up in certain things and make sure you're actively listening to issues that come out. So
I also think a lot of times this is just me watching people in situations like this. People put a little too much trust in the person running an institution or a group or whatever it is, whether it's like the leader of a certain religious group or whatever, and it becomes very toxic very quickly.
Yep.
And that's what happens in a lot of these situations.
Oh yeah, people are very,
kind of
very
need to remember that people, yes, exactly, people are people, and they are not perfect. They are very flawed and cannot always be implicitly trusted.
Well, with that, should we get into a book where you cannot trust anyone?
Especially the author.
Especially the author who personally victimized us. Okay.
And
so we left on a bummer, and we're coming in on a bummer.
We're left on a bummer.
We left on a bummer. We come in on a bummer. Nico is a military man right now. He is charging into a combat mission, and he runs into a truck that's supposed to have like rebel army people on it.
Honestly, this scene is shocking.
It was really bad because like he runs into it. Everyone's like, oh my God, that was so amazing. And then they shoot up the truck. Then they find out it was not full of a rebel army. It was full of 2 men and children. Like,
it was 2 guys probably with their kids, or it was like a family. And they're like, wait, what? This wasn't people that were trying to destroy the
government. And the little girl is like slowly dying, and they shoot her out of her misery. And then the army people surrounding Nico are like, well, they were probably sympathizers. Like, they should have died anyway. They probably helped the rebels. Like, we must kill. And then they like decide to kill the girls for quote unquote mercy. Nico is like, hey, we're supposed to report these things. It's company policy that when we make these kind of mistakes, we have to report them. And they're all like, yeah, we're not going to do that. Like, and so he's like, well, I'm going to report it because he believes in duty. And they were like, no, because who would believe you? We're saying that nothing happened. They're not going to believe some Kekanese man, you know.
They're kind of having a standoff here a little bit because some of the other people within this organization, they don't really care about Nico or who he is. And they're kind of, I shouldn't say kind of, they are racist, and they're just like, shut up. Don't cause problems. We're moving on. We don't want to get higher ups involved.
And Nico is also horrified because he's like, we're all wearing Jade. We should have known. Like, we just didn't. I didn't have time to do this because I was busy like running into the truck. These people were wearing Jade, and they shot first. They didn't sense. They should have known not to open fire. So Nico's having a change of heart to his military ways. We cut on over to Shay and Wen, who are going to Shotar. They're having a fun getaway with General relaxing while they go on a couple business trips. Wen meets with a movie exec in Shotar who currently has Danny Sinjo's acting contract. She wants to make a deal to get him in a role that was written for him and that would have international claim and really bring like good names to Keikan. But it would delay in the films he's already currently contracted for. She says she's willing to pay, but the guy isn't biting. She realizes during this that he is being controlled by one of the Shotarian crews and he can't really help her. But when is when? So she also has to be like, well, my husband will be none too pleased with you and he will hear about this, even though she kind of knows that Hilo wouldn't care necessarily. Mm-hmm. So that night they go out to dinner.
It's one of those things too where when you look back, when we get ahead a little bit, you look back at this situation and you're like, don't try to be tough. And
also Wen's biggest flaw where she believes in the green bones so much. Like she's the greatest person in this book, really, if you think about it. And because she believes in it so much, it gets her into dicey situations the second she leaves Keikan. Like she can't handle it. So that
she has so much faith in what they do in their community.
So they're going out, they're driving home. Wen has 2 bodyguards in the front seat with her that travel with her everywhere. They're pulled over by a cop and Shay is like, we must follow the customs. Like, don't worry. And she thinks about the fact that most greenbones are taught not to fight, to always like listen and to get arrested if they need to because of like racist people and they have lawyers. But she also recognizes that these 2 were like their bodyguards first to Wen. So they have like a complicated mixed emotion with handling a cop.
Right.
So she's telling them to listen and not panic, but the cop keeps yelling at them in a language they cannot understand. He tells the driver to get out and suddenly they are surrounded and they find out that this was all a setup to get the 2 women. Shay and the men try to fight their way out, but they are outnumbered and the men are shot multiple times and they are both kidnapped. Hilo gets a call from the Shotarian men about the women. He said he needs proof of life when it's put on the phone, and she says they can't. They hurt her bodyguards badly, but she isn't injured. The man comes back on the phone and demands money and Jade in the next 7 days, and they will release Wen. Then they have an additional 7 days to pull everything of No Peak out of Shotar. They will then release Shay. He's not to bring anyone into this, no federal or cops at all. And they said, although you may rule Keikan, this is not Keikan. We get Wen's POV. She is naming the men in her head, and she is, of course, the greenest person here. So she's like, well, that one's a dog. That one's Junior. That one's dog number 2. She is hearing and seeing her bodyguard slowly die. She's taken to the bathroom, and she demands that he is treated, and one of them comes up and shoots him in the head.
Because they're just suffering. And they were purposely letting them suffer.
And then they were like, well, we're sick of their screams, so we'll kill them now. So it's just like trying to show how tough they are and how much they don't care about the green bones around them and, all that stuff. So Hilo is getting things taken care of. They're going to pay everything. They won't trust federal agents or anyone else. They check in to make sure that this isn't the Mountain who's in bed with a gang called the Matyos, but it's definitely not them. They look into who Shay met with, but nothing shows up. So they figure it was the man that Wen met with. They kidnap him. And he was like, I had to save my life. I had to call the crew. They're named the Faltas. And this is a subordinate gang to the Matyos. They were likely trying to get favor on capturing the No Peak people to like get them better standing. Woon is being fearful. Woon is not helpful. And he's like, I should have been there with my wife. And Hilo's like, dude, you have a child. Go home.
Woon is always the guiltiest man in the room.
Woon just doesn't help the situation at all. No. Tia is scared about her mom, and Rue is trying to help her. Hilo is afraid and willing to do whatever it takes. Wen is then exchanged across a bridge for money and Jade. She like still tries to convince this junior guy that like you have more soul than this, and he's like, no, I don't. Get out of here. Like
Wen always wants to think that there's more humanity in these people than there actually is, and sometimes people just like don't care.
Or more Aisho. She's like, I can get to their Aisho, and it's like, I wasn't raised in your customs. I'm so sorry. This won't work on me.
No, don't really care. You can't appeal to my better nature.
I'm so sorry. I don't think I should have children to be warriors of Jesus. Like
not happening.
Call back. But anyway, she says she must talk to Hilo immediately because she knows they won't give Shay up. It was too easy to get her, and based on their actions back at the safe house, they were way too happy because they were all like bragging and stuff. And they obviously don't fear no peak, so she knows that they're bragging about something bigger than money or Jade, and that must mean being able to use Shay. We cut to Shay's POV for the first time, which I told Laura I had to look ahead in these sections because I needed to know that Shay survived. We were really busy this weekend and I couldn't read it like in one sitting. And she was like, "Oh, I just kept reading." I was like, "There was no time, Laura. I had to know."
I don't know why, but when I get into these situations like this, it's very tense. But I usually don't read fast, but I get into such a speed read mode because I'm like, must know what happens.
I just look ahead. We cut to Shay.
Bring myself to do that.
She's tied up. She's thinking about Doru because that man will be forever cursed in our brains. They lead her into
because maybe actually he was a good guy and he had to go through some tough stuff too. No,
he was once tortured like this, and he only came out a pedophile, Laura. God, I hate that. They lead her into a bathroom where they bring out the Jade they just won and the other bodyguard who hasn't died yet. She figured out that they want to gain information more, and then they want to give it to the mountain to overstep the Matios who don't work as hard as they do in their country. So it's always like the people in power really just take advantage of the people underneath them, and they want to take advantage now. They ask her who her white rats are in the Mateo cruise and in the government, and she refuses to tell them. And she's like, "I don't know. That's green bones." And she's like, "I totally know. I'm not supposed to, but I definitely know because I was really involved with the Shotarian expansion, and no one else wanted to be here but me." So then they decide to torture her. I thought she was going to get waterboarded in this section because they took her into the bathroom.
It's worse.
No, they pour Jade on her. And they
because essentially I think what's happening is like a tub shower thing with like a door on the front. So then they put them in the tub, both of them facing each other, and they're tied up, obviously. And then they pour Jade over them to give them the itches. Yeah, pretty much. And like to overextend, it's pretty much being waterboarded via Jade almost, where like everything that like all their powers are enhanced to like a degree that they cannot control, and it's like overdosing pretty much. Hilo knows something. Painful. It was very painful. Hilo knows something must be done. He calls Anton to drive him somewhere surreptitiously. On their way, they joke about like driving to kill Ash and how far they've come to the fact where they can actually joke about this. And then Hilo arrives at Aitmata's house and he has to see the pillar. We have a flashback to him talking to Lan one night when they were much younger and their grandfather was still in power. Lan confides in Hilo that their grandfather intends to marry off Shay to the horned son of the mountain to keep everything in the family, pretty much, and to keep a good connection. It's kind of like, we'll make this an alliance and then our clans will get along. Yes. One of their they want to keep all the families connected. So they know it will cause a rift because Shay will definitely refuse her grandfather, and he doesn't seem to understand that she is her own person. And there's no other outcome. She's definitely going to overreact. This will be horrible. And like Hilo's like, little did I know in a couple of years she'd break our grandfather's heart. Hilo decides to step in. He goes into the mountain territory, waits for the guy to be called, and challenges him to a duel. He faked being drunk in order to fight fair, and he's beaten badly during this fight, but at the end, he's able to channel into the man, shocking him and then slicing open his artery. Basically, what happens is he fakes this whole fake drunk thing. Works really well for him, and the guy thinks that he's just like not a good fighter because he's so drunk. And then you found out that actually the Mike brothers were drinking all of his alcohol and like kind of making a scene with him at the bar. And then Hilo is able to have a sneak attack and take care of the guy. During that time, also didn't know if he was going to win. He's like, I'm still chancing it. I'm not that powerful. I am not as strong as him. Knew he wasn't as strong and didn't have as much Jade. But he was willing to sacrifice himself in order to keep Shay protected. And he rushes out of there because he's still in the mountain territory after he kills this man. And then he faces the ire of his grandfather to save the clan and to save Shay.
it was also talked about this section where he was like, I really thought the horn would have killed me one day, but luckily, like a year later, I took him out for me. Like, it's the one good thing she ever did for me. Now he goes into the mountain territory. He goes up to Ite and he tells her about what happened to Shay. He implores her to help him based on the fact that Shay once saved her life and he needs Ite's help. She's actually really shocked by this. She's like, I didn't think he had this in him.
Well, she knows that it takes a lot of humility to do this, and she's like, I didn't think that he was this humble to be able to come and ask for my help. But then she also plays the stupid thing where she's like, I'm not involved. Why would you think I'm involved?
Like, and she does consider doing nothing because like she's like, well, I could just let Shay be taken out. But Hilo threatens her, saying that Andon will go to the press about the shame she brought on her family if she fails to save Shay when Shay saved her at the bombing of the KJA. She says she's like, well, that's just a moment in life. Like, I could be harangued by the press, but like, who cares? And, and he's like, yeah, but like, you're talking about 5 years ago when you were in control of everything. You're not talking about right now when you have like nationalist Cobans knocking at your door to get you to step down to be pillar. Like, you can't take a hit like you used to. He does know that there is some shame left in her with the fact that Shay helped her. And like, he's like, if you help me now, like all debts are repaid. And he's like, if you do this, I will pull out of Shotar for you. And he swears on it. She says that the Matios are not like the clans. And he's like, yeah, you still have sway with them, though. Like, you can still get them on your side. We cut back over to Shay, who's still being tortured. And she's trying to only give so much information away, like slowly but surely. They finally ask her about the human deal. And when she says she doesn't know what they're talking about, they swear she must, because she is the weatherman of No Peak and she must know what's going on with the mountain.
And this she actually does not know.
Nope. And they keep torturing her when they suddenly receive a phone call. We caught on over to Lot, the Horn, and a few of the Mountain and Greenbow men. They are working together to get Shay out. Then one of Lot's fists, who has great skill for perception, he's like the Deus Machina of this final chapter, where it's like, hey, we should get Vin in here. Like, he just pops up all over the place.
I'm pretty sure that he was like involved in some other scenes earlier where they're like, we need somebody to like perceive if this is going on inside there, if there's anybody in there or whatever.
I just felt like he kept popping up towards the end of the book where I'm like, oh, Vin's here again. Diesel, Too Fast, Too Furious. He is watching and waiting to give the word to save Shay. He feels something change inside and he calls them into action. We cut back into Shay, and the Faltas say that the Matios turned on them and they let Greenbones into the country. They need to get out now. They are arguing over whether to turn themselves to Ite, because of course she'd be on their side. Like, why would the other one, like, why would she not want to murder an O-Peak person? But they know that they will have to kill Shay. Then Greenbones swarm and they get Shay out of there. She doesn't recognize one of them, and he's like, the Mount Ite Mada gives her regards. And it's a very cinematic moment. We find out in the next section, which is what I read when I looked forward to make sure she survived, that Shay can't bring herself to wear Jade ever again. Andon tells her that he understands, but he does tell her that this is purely psychological, similar to the issues he went through in earlier books, which I thought was a good full circle moment of like, he really thought at the end of the first book that like he couldn't do this. He could never come back, when everyone kept being like, dude, you just need to like give it time. And now he's like, hey, I remember what this is like. I totally understand. But like, just so you know, if you ever wanted to return, you may be able to.
I also appreciated, though, from like a full circle moment for Shay, too, for being someone that had given up Jade.
Yeah.
And that was like, I'm never going to come back to this. And then she does come back to it. And then she has to have, it's not the nice full circle moment, but it's, yeah, and it's not in her terms, but she does have a full circle moment where she's back to being Jadeless. And yeah, I thought that was kind of a pretty moment.
But she does have moments throughout the book, which I loved as well, that we won't discuss as often, but she does discuss with Hilo a lot, where he's like, how do you do it? How do you not wear Jade? And she's like, I survived this before. So like, to me, it's like taking a tool out of my toolkit. It is not who I was as an identity. And so I do like that, where it's like she's lost Jade before, so she knows it's not the end all be all. We find out that Ike got the Machos to follow to turn over the Faltas by allowing an immigration ban that was going through committee to lapse so that the Shatarians can still come into Keikon. This also made her lose favor with the Copans because Rush Limbaugh's wife is now a councilwoman and she supported the bill.
Annoying.
I know, but they can't speak too loudly because they know they can't do anything to dissuade for their nephew rising to the pillar. So Hilo asks Shay what she'll do without Jade, but she's like, I will just continue to be the weatherman. But she is curious about the human deal. Chapter 49 is a terrible chapter, and I don't want to talk about it, but I have to.
Gotta.
It's Rue's birthday celebration. And his friend Dano convinces him to go to the mountain territory to this clanless bar that has a lot of clout as like a former clanless, like it's like, oh, lots of clanless come here. Come on, come here. And he's like, I know the bartender. And so he goes in and Rue's kind of like, this place is a real dive. I wonder why like Dano is bringing me here. But the bartender, who we find out is Barrow's friend Tadino, offers Dano free drinks for bringing Rue in. He's like, man, you really do know him. And he's laying it on thick. And then he calls over this woman who starts flirting with Rue, knowing that he is a call. And he kind of takes full advantage, thinking about how his siblings never allow themselves to enjoy any perks of being a call. And they always feel like put upon. And he definitely...
And he's like, oh, you know what? I never get this kind of opportunity. So if this girl likes me, I'm going to take full advantage of it.
And he's like, I never get these opportunities like them. I always take a full advantage when I get it. But we find out over in Barrow and Tadino's POV that Tadino set this plan up. Barrow's there. He wants to stay out of it, but he is impressed that this man was able to pull all of these mechanisms. The girl who's flirting with Rue is the girlfriend of one of the Copans, and she cheats on him a lot. He always sends men to the hospital for it, and Tadino thinks that if he does it to Rue, the No Peak will come down from the mountain.
They want to start a war between the clans, because Barrow in the last section was like, you know what we need to do? We need to get them fighting each other. The enemy fights the enemy, and then we don't have to fight.
I think it was still Tadino who was thinking that, and I think Barrow was like, yeah, I guess that was when I was at my best, but also like, I just don't care.
You're right.
I'm a sociopath. That's pretty much like
Barrow only cares about Barrow.
Barrow is a sociopath. I feel like this is a good psychological view of someone who like has that. But they want to start another clan war with a Coban sending a call to the hospital. And this Coban man is the councilwoman's son. So he is Ayato's
cousin.
He calls the Coban boy and he has Barrow be the lookout. Rue and the girl are like in the back room about to have sex. And I'm like, you're still in a public place, Rue. Like, have some decency. But they
doesn't care.
They see this older man watching them, and Rue like goes to close the curtains. But the guy is like, hey, you've been set up. And immediately the Copans arrive and they start to beat up on Rue. Because Rue was told this is a setup and he was betrayed. He is like super angry because he's like, the only reason this is happening is because of my family name. Like, and I don't get any of the perks. Like, I just wanted one night of freedom. And then he starts thinking about the principle of being a call. And like how he has to stand up for his family. And he like tells the Coban man who he is. And he's like, this is a setup. I'm offering a clean blade to get out of this so we can all walk away from it. The guy is like, I can't battle you. You're not a green bone. And Rue's like, no, I want a clean blade with Tadino, that guy, because he's the one who set me up. He's the one who wanted to start this.
And I do give Rue a lot of credit in this moment because it's like, yeah, you are trying to do what you think is the honorable thing. And you're being Hilo Jr. and trying to portray a good image of the clan and everything.
And he also knew that like the repercussions would be large if this guy does send him to the hospital. So he's like, if I can get out of this and use my wits, like the whole situation can be walked away from.
Right.
So he tells Tadino to pick a weapon and he chooses bare hands. Rue is still a very skilled martial artist. So he is able to because
Hilo made sure he was trained.
So he is able to get like an upper hand. And he starts fighting Tadino. He pretty much takes him out, and then he starts choking him. Rue chokes Tadino, and Tadino tries to call it, But Rue won't stop. He wants to teach this man a lesson. We know because we're in his head that he's not intending to kill him, but he does want to show the man that he is not someone to be messed with. But Totino, who is suffocating and scared for his life, reaches for Rue's talon blade and slits Rue's throat. And Rue sits there bleeding to death. The Coben men try to stop the bleeding and they are unable to.
Yeah, they're trying to heal him.
Yeah, they're trying to heal him because all hell is breaking loose. They're like shocked. They know that Hilo will definitely come after them. They immediately tell Totino that he has a dirty blade because he used a weapon when he wasn't supposed to, and they kill him. And then the Coben man kills his girlfriend for causing this as she begs for her life. They tell Barrow, who is still there, and Barrow's like, why am I still here? I'm sitting here, to spread the word about what happened and that they were involved and that this was an accident.
Barrow's the luckiest person in the world.
I know. Hilo wakes up seeing a car come down the driveway and he knows it's bad. So he goes downstairs and Andon gets out of the car and he knows that they always send Andon when it's horrible. He walks up and he tells Hilo that he saw Rue's body himself, and Hilo is devastated. He always aimed to protect Rue. It's kind of talked about how he was a little bit too careful with Rue, but he has to go upstairs to tell Wen and ruin her life. And then I started crying uncontrollably during this section. I
had already been crying.
Okay. It did take me knowing Wen had to learn that her son was dead to start being like, oh my gosh.
Once he was cut, I was just like, and I could not control it.
Oh gosh. Everyone expects fire to rain down, but Hilo is shockingly pragmatic in this situation. He seems to know that nothing will bring his son back and that this was an accident, and the people who caused it are dead. This wasn't the clanless.
Honestly, I was shocked by his reaction too, because I was like, and that makes me cry too, thinking how far has he come that he has the ability to say you know what, this is a tragic accident and we need to just make sure that everybody's okay and prevent stuff like this from happening in the future.
I know. They do look in to make sure it's not a clanless movement thing coming up, but they realize that it's one random man. The Coben cousin, led by his mother, come and they present their ears for shame, which they cut for Hilo, and Hilo just takes it and he's like, yep, this is enough. He doesn't have it in him to seek retribution when he knows Rue wouldn't want that. Rue wanted to, and he lists all the things Rue wanted, and I was still crying. Rue wanted to spread their wealth to jadeless people, to help non-reactive people, and to help the Abuke. And Hilo always dismissed him and belittled his things. It's oh, what a fun hobby, but we can't do everything. And he would do anything to bring him back. At the funeral, Hilo has a moment where I felt so bad for Wen. We're Wen sitting there, and then Hilo's the second I found out he was a stone eye, I should have given that child away. And it hurts Wen, but she knows he doesn't mean it. He's just in pain. It's a good moment because
it's always one of those
where she's this isn't about us. This is about grief, and you can't listen to this right now. I can't trust his own thoughts right now.
And it's a moment where it's showing even after their son has died, Hilo's still thinking I could have protected him, and the best way for me to protect him would have been to just remove him from me.
But he also said he shouldn't have encouraged Rue to be so powerful. They should have taught him how to stay safe. And then when they go to leave, suddenly Nico appears. It's noted that he's been out of contact with them, or he's been out of his contract for about 10 months, and everyone expected for him to come home, but he never did. Wen walks up to him and slaps him. He apologizes to Hilo for being a bad son and asks to be a part of the family again, and he maims his ear in respect. Hilo stops him from going further, telling him that he never stopped being his son, and he embraces him. The third...
and at this moment, Laura cries.
Oh, everyone cries. Nico cries. Everybody cries. The third interview, we find out a little bit about how the Call's father died. He and a group attacked a fortified Shotarian military base that was near Lukang. They were surrounded by Shotarians, but 20 of them were able to take out a lot of the force, but they were slaughtered in the process. And it talks about how the One Mountain Society was able to send in reinforcements to take them out, but Kaldu's body, or their father's body, was hanging from one of the military bases windows pretty much, so it was just very hard. It was an infamous battle, but Kaldu's father couldn't speak after it happened, so their grandfather. And then at like the funeral and everything that came afterward, Ugantan spoke, or Ugantan, Ugantan spoke for
Is
him.
it Kaldu or Kalsen?
Oh, it's Kalsen, sorry.
Kalsen is the grandpa.
Yeah.
Kaldu is the father.
The father. But Kalsen couldn't speak, and he was just so locked in grief, but the one mountain pillar was able to speak for him. We find out that Ai has a rat in the mistress of the godly Aspenian from the prior section who like bought out Jin Sumto's company. She found out that he's going to be taking a political position in Espenia, which means he must step down from his company and sell his shares, which includes Jin Sunto's mercenaries and the ships that are dragging Jade for the Espenians. She also knows that the man has ties to the crews in Espenia, and she has and he has had an arrangement for them that I can now use for her advantage to get him to sell to her, because he is likely a racist, but he wouldn't want his bad connections getting out. The girl kind of talks about how she wants to leave and not be this man's
this is
mistress
also
anymore.
Tragic because like she does not want to be with this man. She was kind of forced into doing this to help her family out, get them some money, and she has a girlfriend that she wants to be with, and it's just very sad.
Well, it shows how like little I like cares for people, because I's just sitting there like, you're still young, you have plenty of your life, and I helped you, so get out of here.
The lack of empathy there is just astounding to me, because you have like, I get it that Mata has overcome a lot and had to face a lot of challenges herself, but you would think that, especially when looking towards like another young woman, especially, that she would maybe have a glimmer of understanding for why a 25-year-old doesn't want to like be with this old Espenian man. Like,
right. It was pretty bad. But she does let the girl go. And she calls her weatherman, and she tells him it's now time to make arrangements. Then we cut on over to Nico, who's like been invited back into the family, and he's working very, very hard. He's doing all the jobs he's been asked to do, including going into the slums and finding Barrow. Who he walks in and gives his like legal name, and Barrow's like, don't call me that, call me Barrow. And it's like, oh, it's Barrow. But who he does know that Barrow was a spy for the Espenians, and he knows this because they released privileged documents with Barrow's name after 10 years of secrets of him being the catfish. And although Barrow did get a new name from them, he asked for government assistance with his old name. And he's now just a drunk man. Nico asks him questions about his time in Espenia and the bombing of the KJA, and he complies and tells him everything for money. As he's about to leave, he tells Nico he recognizes the necklace that Nico's wearing, and Nico's like, it's my father's. And Barrow's like, I wore that necklace once.
This moment to me was, I mean, I also cried in this moment, but this moment to me was like so harrowing to think about, like this drunk man trying to be boastful and also to try and get a reaction out of Nico and say, yeah, I killed your dad. I used to wear that, Jade. And I could picture it so clearly.
Because Barrow could have walked away from this. Like, Nico kind of just didn't care. He was like, hey, drink yourself to death here. Do it somewhere a little bit nicer. But like, you have 24 hours to call a number. Please do this. And the guy has to be like, hey, you know me, this guy you're just randomly talking to, I'm the most important person. I made you who you are today. Like, I murdered your father. And Nico like kind of looks at him and he's like, okay. And Barrow,
honestly, though, like the self-control that Nico has, and like as much as he has dealt with, for him to just be able to like, I don't know, I found this emotional too, and it shows all of the Lon that's in him. And
well, it also shows that like how much Nico has grown from the last sections, because they had to, like, Fonda Lee did such an effective job of being like, oh, he could be petulant and sad and like my mother and now my father, but he's just kind of like, well, this is what happens. This is the world we are in.
Yeah, now he's at a point where he's like, look, I'm not going to be the one responsible for killing you. I know that's what you want.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that reaction out of me. Sorry.
Well, and the guy is like, I'm the one who caused all this. I'm the one who started all this. And Nico is like, you were hired by the mountain. Like, you didn't start anything. Like, yes, you made decisions, but like, you like the mountain is ultimately responsible too for hiring a guy like you. And he's like, you want to mean something to me. That's why you're acting that way. But I'm not going to give you the consequence of your life that you're looking for. You are not consequential to my story. And
as a reader who wanted something bad to happen to Barrow for so long,
this was a perfect ending.
I mean, honestly, this was like, it was the slap in the face that I needed too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, you don't get the satisfaction of seeing Barrow die like that.
No, you get to see him fade into non-existence as like,
because he's not as important as he thinks he is.
Right. Well, and he's like, Nico's not wrong in being like, hey, you think you caused this. And it's like, yeah, Barrow did go rogue, but some people hired guys who would go rogue. Like, that's the problem, you know?
The thing is, Barrow wants to believe, like, I'm the reason all of this exists. I'm the one I'm the puppet master. And it's like, you're not at all.
But we do find out that Nico's been the perfect employee. He became a FIS quickly. He's going to college and and after being trained as a soldier, he's working well with everyone. He's even working well with Shay. And even Jaya, who is very self-centered, is worried that he isn't taking enough time off. But he's getting more power and responsibility. So he's like really gearing up to be Pillar. Shay is called to talk to the Aspedians. Apparently, one of the government contracts on the human island has had issues with Abuke people and other non-Jade civilians having mass sit-ins near the military base because they don't want their fish and food to be affected by the offshore digging and dredging that the Aspedian government people are doing, or what private companies are doing with Aspedian military control. Shay like walks into the meeting and she's like, well, these are private citizens. Greenbones do not go after private citizens. We will not violate Aisho. And the councilwoman is like, well, as someone who studied your culture, Aisho isn't as important to you, and you will violate it if you have a good enough reason, correct? And Shay's just kind of like, and they also try to hang over their head that like, don't you want the ban on Jade to be overturned in Aspenia? And we could stop that. And Shay's like, yeah, you could, but then we're going to bring forth a lot of evidence that you knew about the bombing of the Greenbone leaders all those years ago. And they try to call her bluff and be like, that's unfounded. And she's like, nope, we've been looking into it. We found it all. Like, it is no longer unfounded. It is found. We also know that Malavny was here that day of the bombing and you grabbed him, and you keep bragging that you turned him, but psychological torture into compliance is not turning someone, and it's not in keeping with the Republic of Aspedian standards. So they would get really bad press if they did this. And it was all revealed. Shay is like, we're smarter than you think. It's an election year and you don't want to be out of power when this all comes out. When they try to point out that this would just be bad press in Aspenia and no one cares about KCON, it's not necessarily dire. Nico steps in with Operation Firebreak, and everyone like shifts, and one of the commanders in the room is like, what do you know about Operation Firebreak? And Nico's like, I was there.
Yeah, we learned that Nico has been coming in on these meetings, and he was supposed to kind of keep quiet in this and just kind of observe, but then he goes a little rogue and like says like, look, I have some information because I was there and I know that you guys are doing a bunch of shady stuff.
And so Shay's like, listen, we will sit on all this information if you make sure that Jade legislation goes through, but we will not be helping you in human. The ambassador gives a veiled threat that she cannot control what happens if Kekanese people try to go on the military property. And Shay's like, yeah, the one thing I never worried about is Aspenians caring about Kekanese people. And so once they go into the car, Miko apologizes for not warning her about Operation Firebreak. He's like, we signed a lot of NDAs, so like technically I don't know how sound it was to say that, but like I was able to learn information outside or just reading the room. But he figured some things out in the background that they sent in non-military GSI agents into skirmishes where the military could not be involved, but it was military related, and the military was paying them to like overturn governments and like kill people and make sure things were happening the Espinian way that they wanted. And Shay's like, yeah, you should have told me about this.
Mm-hmm.
We do find out that they're waiting outside Tia's school, and she did not go to school to be a greenbone. She didn't have it.
Which I love.
I loved that. I like that it was her choice. And then Shay asks Nico if he really wants to be Pillar. Nico said he went out searching for who he was, and he discovered that there are two types of people, those with power and those without. Although he sees issues with Greenbones, the outside world isn't any better, and he can try to make sure the things that made him keep on, because at least he knows that there is some honor there, and he can try to keep up with that honor. And he's kind of like, Rue tried to teach me that, but I didn't listen.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Shout out to Rue.
I know. Shay kind of like has a moment where she's like, that's so, there's no sentiment in him. There's no like there's just like, well, there are bad people and there are good people, and I guess the best you can do is what you do. Or like, there's no good, there's no bad, there's just people. And like, I might as well be here because anywhere else isn't great. And she's like, that kind of sounds like Aimata. Like, there's no love or honor.
I also thought that too when I read it, because I was like, I don't know. I would like to ask Fonda Lee like what the intention with that quote is.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like I kind of read it as just being like, you know what? I guess being here is better off than other places.
Yeah.
It could be. And he kind of is just like the reluctant leader, like, well, there could be a lot worse people in charge than me. Mm-hmm. And it's like, is that the best attitude?
I don't know.
But I'm curious to know, like, because it could also be read in like a very like almost honorable way, where he's like, you know what, Rue taught me that there are good and bad people, and people in power need to do their best to make sure that honor is upheld and all this. So there's multiple ways to read this, I guess, depending on the tone that you take.
I don't know. I can't wait to talk it. Let's pin it for next week. Because I definitely want to go into that quote a little bit more and everything that we see in it. But Tia comes out and they all go home. But she does say in that moment, like, at least Nico has his family to steer him straight. Legislation passes, so Jade can now be worn in Espinia. Everyone celebrates at the weatherman's office. Andon is there, and he talks to Corey over the phone to congratulate him. Corey is nice to a point, but he is standoffish since Andon helped kill Remy. We also find out that Danny Sinjo's movie went like internationally, like super success. It was a fish out of water cop movie because Fonda Lee knows her media and knows exactly what movie to make it. I laughed so hard at that, where everyone was talking and they're like, oh my gosh, it's a martial artist and like a curmudgeonly Espinian, like trying to solve a mystery. And I was like, oh my gosh, every late 90s to early 2000 film ever.
And also, we know for a fact that Fonda Lee loves martial arts movies. She loves action movies. So what a perfect add-in.
I loved it so much. Hilo arrives to congratulate Shay's big win, and he honors her as a warrior. I loved this moment. I cried when he was just like, you know, this was a long battle. It doesn't feel, it's not as immediate as some of the other people, but she is a warrior and she did succeed. It is also noted that he's been a shell of himself until recently, and Andon almost didn't think he would come out of it, but he is finally opening up to being a little bit of himself again.
Yeah, and it's revealed too that like he's doing some things that Rue would have wanted, like donating money to causes that probably wouldn't have done before, and yeah,
and so
a little more community outreach, that type of thing.
Exactly. Andon kind of knows that he's doing this because like he wants some kind of connection with Rue. They also notice that like there are some rumors going around that No Peak is now weak because Hilo is kind and giving to the places that Rue wanted. But also there is something in the community where they're like, wow, they kind of get it. They're with the times. Like they seem to have an understanding of people. And
I honestly think it shows a lot of strength on Hilo's part that he's able to overcome these parts of himself and be more humble and acknowledge that other people make good points, other people need support, and that he is in a position that he can provide support to people.
I agree. I really liked Hilo in this book. Andon is also now appreciative that Jahuya does not interact with No Peak events. Like he's not there. They have distance, and like his boyfriend kind of treats it like oh, this is your job, but it's not who you are. And it's like, that's actually kind of nice.
It's so healthy, honestly.
Yeah,
and it was one of those things, like, when we were reading about this previously, I was kind of like, why doesn't his boyfriend want to come? Like, it's not that big of a deal to go to this party. But now when you're farther along, you're like, I kind of get it, and I think it's smart and probably better off for the relationship. It'll keep them together because they're not like forced into situations where they're uncomfortable and may feel out of place.
When his boyfriend is Abuke, so he's like, no, I am like seen as a different class around a lot of people. So like, why would I put myself in that uncomfortable situation? I love you and you are enough. And I'm like, oh, that's actually very healthy. But they also find out that his boyfriend is at the Human Islands right now, helping with the sit-ins. Although Anton is scared for him, Julia is like, yeah, you don't really have a leg to stand on, my guy. You're part of a Greenbone clan. Like, I get to do what I want to do. Nico and Ken's son are there, and they seem to be warm with each other and have a good kinship. Hilo also asked Shay and Anded when they got so old, because like, I'm exhausted. But everything seems a little bit lighter right now. But then we cut to Shay at her daughter's like dance class, and she finds
I love this moment. She's like breaks into a sweat at dance class because she's like, I know what's going on.
The daughter's like, why are you so nervous, mommy? And she's like, don't worry about it. It's just Greenbone stuff. I just got to go home right now. And so Shay figures out that the human agreement is Aimata is going to purchase a controlling interest in the Spinning Man's
Sunto's company.
It's going forward in 6 weeks, and it will get her access to the offshore mining to companies in Espinia to put them on the same footing as No Peak or even greater. And the mountain will be lauded in KCON when they take over everything. They'll have way more jade. They'll have way more power.
She's like, they've beat us.
Yep. She goes and she tells Hilo that it's all over. And he's like, it's not over until we're dead. She's asked him how we handle this. And he says, the same way we've always done it. You don't handle the world. You make the world handle you. Hilo sends Jaya to Lukang to see the Six Hands.
This is hilarious.
She goes on a road trip with all of her peeps.
So we find out that Jaya like has to work really hard. Well, she has to work really hard to like move up in the ranks because obviously sexism, but it's such a thing that she has to basically create like a personality where people are like her friends, and that she like treats them to going out to eat and makes it fun, where it's like at the beginning of the day,
she's party house or two.
I don't know why, but I'm picturing it as like the transition from like you're going to like one manager who's like, okay guys, we have these things to do today, and then the new young hip manager is like, all right guys, so I thought we'd start off with like a little mixer this morning and get to know each other. And that's kind of like Jaya's like,
I want you to know I'm not like a regular mom. I'm a cool call. Like, I'm not like a regular call. I'm a cool call.
Here's the thing. I'm going to be the horn someday. And I want you guys to...
time while we do it. Like...
This fist is not like the regular fists. We're going to have fun. I'm going to treat you guys to a little party afterwards if this all goes well.
I think Jaya may be Elle Woods. Hello, my name is Jaya Call, and this is my dog, Bruiser Call.
As far as like people underestimating her and her being super effective, absolutely.
Right, exactly. So she and her friends go on a little road trip. They're like listening to show bop, and they're like
probably K-pop.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's K-pop. And she is building a name for herself in the South to the point where like Hilo will be like, you want to come home? And she's like, yeah. And so she goes,
I couldn't hear you. She says what?
Oh, she's like, okay, Dad.
I can't hear you.
Oh,
no.
I
can't hear you. You get too high, I think, is the problem.
Oh, really?
I think your voice gets too high.
Highly. Oh, he's speaking at the level of a dog. No, she's just like, no, Dad, I'm okay. Thanks, bye. And she hangs up on him and she returns to her party houses. So she goes to where the pillar of Six Hand clan hangs out, and it's like noted that he's super paranoid.
Yeah, because he's known as like a kin killer, and ever since all of this happened, you know, when they tried to get them as part of the No Peak clan, and he turned them into the Mountain Clan and became Pillar, he's been like paranoid, like always looking over his shoulder, has a million bodyguards because he's like, yep, nobody trusts me now.
And he also was able to get into power through the mountain because of the KJA meeting where he only survived because he was super paranoid. Yep. And so she goes to a place where he's always eating, and she gives him the quote unquote opportunity to join with the No Peak clan and defect to the mountain. He makes a pass at her, and he is horribly sexist and sexual harassment abound. And then she's like, well, you just insulted me, so I ask you for a clean blade. He rejects it.
He's like, I'm not gonna fight a girl. Like,
she does say that most men do refuse to fight her, which sucks. But
for multiple reasons too. One, because sexism. Two, because they are terrified of her, because they're like, yeah, if we fight you, Hilo will destroy us.
Yeah. And so she's like, well, since you didn't accept it, she has all her people come and murder them, and like, because she's like, well, he wouldn't accept a clean blade, so I got to take my vengeance. Like, and she's so like, then she's like, and then she was like, hey, do I look good for the camera? Like, help me make sure it looks okay.
Well, it's like mentioned like that she's wearing like a really fashionable outfit and everything. She's got like cool sneakers on, but she's also wearing like a nice shirt and like a nice skirt and everything. And it's like she's hip and cool, but also like dressed to fight. So
I know, she's amazing. I mean, she's not amazing. There are many, many issues, but
yeah, there's a lot of issues, but she has to overcome a lot.
Yes. So she does, she like gives a ton of sound bites about like, this was all I could do. And then she goes home and she calls Hilo and she's like, hey dad, are you proud? And he's like, why wouldn't you call me sooner? And she's like, well, you saw me on the news, so you knew I was fine. I don't know why we think she's a valley girl, but she is in our minds. So Hilo is,
I think she's definitely much more like brusque than
that,
where it's like definitely, maybe I don't think she's a valley girl or Elwood sounding by any means.
But Hilo knows that the mountain will now send people down, and they will be reeling due to the fact that they didn't expect this because they came from the south, not the north, and the mountain is very focused on or on John Loon and not in the south where Jaya was. And he's like, please be careful. Like, we'll send in reinforcements, but remember that you're still in danger. And he's like, but good job, honey. And you do find out that like he kind of sent her because she is underestimated. And he's like, use that to your benefit. Never feel bad when people look down on you. Andern travels to the Uiwa Islands to meet with Soradayo's cousin from the previous book, the old right-hand man to Zepunyo, the crime boss in the last novel. He tells him he wants him to turn on the mountain and admit all that they did with the Barucan crime gangs. He tells him to shove it, but Andon offers to keep his family safe and send them to Port Massey, and it is implied that the man breaks, and then we find out that he does. Hilo goes to the Human Islands and he sees all the people involved with the sit-in. They're super excited that a pillar is there. And he talks to Jafuya about Andon, and then they walk up to the military base. He then, because he has white rats in the facility, he knows that there is a helicopter bringing in like a shipment, and he and 3 of his green bones fly into the air.
This is literally amazing.
I just
they have so much lightness. They use so much of their jade energy to lightness and like their lightness to like go soaring up into the air. They just like jump,
and then they hit the helicopter captain with
they grab the helicopter
and they bring it to the
channel
ground
into him to make him unconscious, because they're like, can't kill him from this far up because we're using a lot of energy to like fly, but
but we will bring him down. We can't
just knock him out for a while. By the time he wakes up, this helicopter's going down.
So the civilians and the helicopter going down takes down the fence. The civilians crowd into the facility and a few are gunned down. Hilo has a moment where he's like, oh, maybe this wasn't the best idea. I thought I'd have more control of the crowd, but now they're just like converging.
And also he's kind of like, I'm getting older. That was a lot.
But he's also trying to like get it handled and keep as many people safe as possible. And as the carnage and fighting continues, he tells the militiamen to go get Jim Sunto. And it's also noted here that a ton of men who are wearing green are still shooting people with bullets.
Yep. This is one of my favorite scenes in this book because I
love this scene.
This is amazing.
Oh God. Mr. Religious Man, as our last title
Who would have
episode
thought?
was, comes in and he's pissed. He thinks Hilo all did this, and he's like, Hilo, you created a national incident. You're gonna get arrested. You're gonna be tried in the Espinian courts. And Hilo is like, by what people? Like, who's sending me there? He's like, all you did was incite violence. You'll be he's like, and Hilo's just kind of like, yeah, a man who created mercenaries who took out all these people is yelling at me for the blood I just spilled. Like, are you kidding me? And Sunto is like, that's because I'm a commander. You have to sacrifice people when you're a commander. And then Hilo's like, yeah, like you did with Firebreak. And Sunto immediately is like, you're equivocating morality. Like, you let your people die just now. And like, yeah, I murdered some people, but it's not the same thing. Okay. And so he said that all Hilo did was commit a diplomatic shitstorm. Hilo tells Sunto about his he's like, hey, just so you know, your CEO man is about to sell to the mountain. And
the lack of knowledge that he has on this. I love this moment where Hilo provides this information and he's just kind of has like one of those blank stare moments, like, what?
He's like, he would never do that. He's like, yeah, he would. And he's like, and by the way, like, yeah, you're right. I'll never step on Espinian land again. But you want to know what? You and your men can never come to K-Con because no one is ever going to forget the look of men wearing jade gunning down innocent people. Yep. And Sunto was like, those men were working in self-defense. And Hilo's just like, it doesn't work like that here. Like, our entire system is built on the fact that people respect Green Bones and Aisho and what we do for them and the fact that we have boundaries. And he's like, our people honor their history. Sunto accuses Hilo of doing this for a vendetta. And Hilo's like, I could do both at once. Like, could help people in the island and do this to like have just make it all something. Sorry. I lost my train of thought once again. Then Hilo plays a tape about Firebreak and all these people who were reporting about what happened and what the Espedian government was using mercenaries for. And Sunto
because he had his little white rat in there that was following Nico, and he can use technology to just be like, well, we can kind of edit his voice a little bit so nobody knows who it is, but here we go.
And he's like, that's Nico. And he's like, no, it's not. I can get. And then Sunto all of a sudden is like, how did you do all this? And Hilo's like, you're an idiot. You thought that we were all thugs and that we could do anything and that we didn't have any technology or an advancement at our fingertips. And he's like, you thought when I told you that there would be vengeance, that the most I could do to you was kill you. And Sunto has this moment where he's like, well, yeah, that's probably true.
I love how he underestimated Hilo. It's one of my favorite things.
Exactly. And Hilo talks about how they will be able to vote out all those who employ Sunto with all this information, and that Sunto will end up getting the blame when it all comes out, because he's like, you look like you're Kikanese. Once they find out about a Firebreak, they will all blame you. And Sunto knows it's true because of racism. And then Hilo says he will let this all die and not bring it up if Sunto helps him turn down or help him bring down his CEO. Sunto tries to argue that he is fighting for the one truth. All of a sudden he's like, but my religion. And Hilo's like, yeah, I don't care.
I don't think that that's relevant.
I never asked. But then Sunto tells him that the mountain got to him, the CEO, because of his he's in bed with the crew, and he agrees to turn over everything and to never come to K-Con again. Shay is going to see the mountain pillar all of a sudden with her bodyguards that she now has to travel with. There are very tame protests going outside, like people just holding up signs like, I gotta leave now. and Shay has to be like, man, usually clans are like, they will keep their opinions to themselves, but that sign tells me that the tables have turned.
How the turntables.
Please leave. Clean up after yourself. Like, it's like a microwave sign, like, please clean up after yourself. So she meets with Ite, who's like, how did you do this all? And Shay was like, what? I mean, it wasn't really me. I had kind of given up, but like everyone else did it. And she has a realization that like I over like calls things because she just believes that everything must come from one person because she only ever trusts herself. And she will always like misapply a group working together. Ait is now ruined. The confluation of Lukang, the tape about the Baruchans coming out about, and the tape even revealed like the attempt on Hilo's life that I pretty much signed off on, about how she was exporting Jade and benefiting on both ends by like exporting to gangs, but also taking in like and reselling. And the deal with the Uman Islands fell through because the CEO was arrested by Doc's daughter, who finally decided to help, like belatedly in the book. And
she finally was like, I guess I will help out.
I guess since you brought me this criminal, I must act. And Ait can't come back from this. Shay offers peace if Ait steps down and lets her nephew move in, then the calls will make peace with him. Shay's like, look, our clans are so big now and they're so international, we could never overtake each other. It is impossible at this point, so let's admit it and let bygones be bygones. Hilo and I want to retire in like 5 years, so we could just leave this to the new generation. It's like, my goal was only whatever was best for K-Con and to bring us all into one clan and control our own destiny. And Shay's like, you mean your destiny, right? Because whose destiny is we? Like, no. And she's like, we aren't gods, we can't do this. And Shay just wants to leave this to the youth. Shay waits outside to see what Ait does, and Ait comes and she announces she is stepping down. The Kobans are celebrating everywhere, and the calls are kind of just talking together, and the inner circle meets. Hilo wants to murder Ait immediately, who is now in some random townhouse in Mountain Territory. Everyone else
at this point, I was kind of like, Hilo, just let it go. Just like let her leave. It's no big deal. And then I was like,
think that?
Oh my gosh.
Who didn't think, just let Ait die? It's fine. Just let her be. Who knew? Everyone wants to take things slower, pretty much. They were invited to a negotiation table by Ayato, where they're like, man, it's way too soon to do that, my guy. You should have waited like 2 more months, but okay. But they do want to move forward with it. So Hilo agrees, but he says he will go with Shay and Nico, and Lot, the horn, will stay out because he'd like Nico as the future pillar to sit down with everyone.
Yeah, so Lot's not going, but it's Shay and Nico and Hilo.
Because only 3 people can go. At dinner, Andon admits he wants to run for a council seat, and he thinks he can do more good than as a doctor, and he asks for Hilo's blessing, which Hilo gives. Hilo goes back up to his room, and Wen is like, you need to be careful. And Hilo obviously now has some background machinations. He says to not give away anything to Shay on accident. And Wen's like, dude, I'm smarter than that. Then they then talk about if Nico is ready to be pillar. And Wen kind of has a like, he won't be as good as you. And Hilo's like, dude, we need to admit that like not everyone has to be carbon copies of each other. And like I was not the pillar that Lan was, who was not the pillar that my grandfather was, who was not the pillar that the man before him was. But then a call is given from Ue, the old weatherman of the Mountain Clan, to Ait, and he says things are in motion, which is when I was like, oh crap, Hilo was right. They decide to meet at the new KJA building. They have designated penitents there, which is important because this setup that happened at very early novels where they're like, penitents always must be in the room. I didn't think to pay off in the 3rd book, Laura, but it did. So they start negotiating, but Hilo hits a button to tell Lot to go after Ait. Lot breaks into her townhouse and he fights some of the Greenbones who are outside, but Ait isn't in there. And he's like, we must get to the KJA building because he finds out that there was a tunnel underneath the building and she has run. They all negotiate. They come to terms on everything to swear an oath of friendship. So Ayato goes first. He swears the oath of friendship. Hilo starts having his spidey senses tingle, though. He asks Nico to step in for him, saying that because he is the next generation, he would like him to make the oath, and because it's so hard with the whole blood feud thing, like Hilo thinks there'll be more coming from Nico. Nico steps in, and with his father's talon knife, he swears an oath of friendship. The second it is over, Nico and Otto have a moment, and Hilo swears under heaven and Jade to Otto, and then he pulls out a gun and he fires it seemingly at Otto, but we find out it was to the penitent behind him who was pulling out a gun and was aiming for Otto. Otto's family member pushes him to the ground, the horn sacrificing himself. Hilo is panicking because he can't deflect the bullets when they may hit Nico and Shay, and I may cry. So he throws Nico to the ground instead, and he is hit by several bullets.
Yes.
Shay is in shock as she sees Hilo shot. This is a horrifying scene because like Shay is going through shock where she's like trying to help Hilo. She's trying to stop the bleeding, and she hears like Otto screaming in the background because he just lost his family member, and he like Nico is also crying for his father. This is very upsetting. Shay screams at the people to call for an ambulance, but Hilo refuses, asking to go home to Wen. Others want to intervene, but he's like, I am your pillar. You will do as I say. He is taken home, and Anda does everything to make his passing more comfortable. We find out that Ai immediately turned herself in after learning of her failure. They found all the original actual penitents tied up. She had tied them up, hoping to kill all the members in the group and then take things over again. Her weatherman is also captured, and he ends up unaliving himself. Hilo speaks with Wen and his family. He also specifically speaks to Shay. He asks her if there's anything that Lan should know, and she says she can't handle this conversation. I love
this. I can't handle it.
It's so realistic to have someone ask you something like that, and for you to be like, can we not? Like, I can't talk to you about this. I can't be the bigger person in this moment. No. People come from far and wide to say goodbye to their pillar.
I love that too, that people are just like out on the street, just like, we love you, Hilo. And
I know. And then he spends his last moment with Wen, and she comes out in her mourning clothes. And then Jaya has to come in, and she's like screaming for retribution, and they're all like, dude, we just had this oath of friendship. We can't do that. And she wants to go after Ai and Ua, and like they're all kind of like, look, under the friendship, the mountain has to have first claim to this. They have custody of them, and Jaya blames Shay for all of this because Jaya kind of sucks a little bit. And he wanted to go after Ai, and Shay never would. Shay just loved the old hag, and Shay slaps Jaya twice, and Jaya flees and isn't seen for days. They do have her followed. She goes to the mountain, but they're already covered with clan members watching out for Ai and the weatherman. But as I said, we know the ending of the weatherman. Hilo's funeral has many people there, and is stuck in his own grief. He's like, my grief is more important than any of these people. But some people do have issues with Nico being the new pillar, but everyone knew that Hilo's intention was to pass things over to him, so they can't really complain. And then all of a sudden, Otto comes and he visits Nico to give his condolences on the call grounds. He tells them that he will no longer be an Ite. He will become a Koban again, which was his family name. He and Nico kind of commiserate over being two men who were thrown into this very soon and who had lost their fathers. He also says that he's going to be giving Ite over to No Peak to decide what to do with her. Andon goes to see Nico, who asks him to be Pillarman. Andon says he cannot be named a clan member because he has to have his own life. He tells him to put Cam in the position, and he will always help him no matter what, but he will continue to run for office. Nico is afraid that Wen doesn't think he should be in power because she's been so quiet. They're all like, look, she loved Hilo. They were meant for each other. Like, she just needs time. And she comes in and she hugs Nico, and they grieve together. The final chapter, weirdest matchup I've ever seen, but Andon goes to see Ite. She says she's disappointed her nephew is so weak that he couldn't take care of her himself, and he's like, yeah, like, times they are a changing, ma'am, and you are stuck in this like retribution model, and no one else is anymore. She asks why Nico didn't come, and he's like, well, Nico doesn't really care about blood loss and things like this. Like, he rises above them. He thinks like this should be handled, but he doesn't think he should like give all of his time and attention to it. He sees the bigger picture, and he doesn't deem you worthy of the bigger picture. Also a great ending with like,
he just thinks you're irrelevant at this point.
And then she's kind of like, well, where's Shay? And he's like, she kind of said all she had to with you. Like, she's done too. No one wants to speak with you anymore. You are irrelevant.
I'm here so you can reminisce about that time that maybe you could have killed me.
Yeah. And then he's like, we're going to send you to Yucatan, and you're going to go to a place with no Jade. And she asks why she's receiving this mercy. And he's like, I don't know if it's a mercy, but no one wants to deal with you. So this is what it is. And he leaves. We find out that he did become a councilman. And he gets into a cab to go to the Twice Lucky. The cab driver says that place sucks, but he used to be a dishwasher there, and he had a lot of wishes for his life back then. Hinting, is it Barrow? Is it Sampa? Who is it? But he says that he has a lot of stories about No Peak, and Andon says that many people would share that old adage.
I assumed it was Barrow. I guess that's me.
I think that he did say Sampa had been killed, but part of me was hoping
I thought Sampa was killed, so I assumed it was Barrow.
I just wish it wasn't Barrow. I wish Barrow was in the final pages, so maybe I was like,
well, I also think it's Barrow just because we're getting so many of these full circle moments. So here's a full circle moment. We started the series with Barrow and we're ending the series with Barrow.
That's fair.
And Andon and Barrow have kind of been the ones that have been kind of leading us along throughout the book. So to end with them is very poetic.
Yeah, wow.
This book is emotional and beautiful, and I loved it so much.
I know. I love this book so much. It's so freaking good.
Oh, it was just fantastic. I can't imagine all of the planning that went into all of this, because you can come up with like character growth, that you want to portray, but to do it in such a timeline like this is fantastic. This book will sit with me for a long, long time.
I agree. I'm so glad this book won. Like, this book was done by listener votes, and
the series was chosen by listener votes.
Yeah, the series was chosen by listener votes. And I just feel so like appreciative of having read these novels. Like, they meant so much. I loved them so much. I can't believe we got to read them. So yeah,
I mean, I can believe it because we probably would have read them. But
I had read the first book already, but like, I don't know.
I'm just saying you're acting like we never would have read these, but
well, it might have taken me forever to read through the series though, because like if you think about it, like there's a lot of like, this book was not small, so I'm bad at finishing trilogies, so the likelihood of me being like, oh, yep, top of the list, like, I don't know.
It probably would have been one of those things where like you read the first book and then wait forever, and then a year later read the second book and you're like, I don't remember what happened on the first book.
Yeah, I think it might have been that for me in the end. Fonda Lee is just amazing, and the way she's able to plot these,
yeah, absolute brilliance in terms of the plotting and the character development. A plus.
Yeah. So guys, we're not done yet because we obviously have
to talk about characters and themes of this book.
And then we have our season finale. So you guys get to hear a little bit more. We're not done with Jade Legacy or the Greenbone saga, as it were. So make sure you guys are listening along, especially next week as we do our final discussion of this particular book. Also, make sure today is the last day to enter into our giveaway. We are giving away one book with a signed book jacket or book. What's it called?
Tippin.
Yeah, Tippin. Of The Assassin of Grins and Secrets, our indie intermission pick. We have that going on.
K.E. Andrews.
Yes. You can enter into it on Instagram and on Twitter. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're reading the book, picking it up on anywhere you go to get your books, because it looks so good and I can't wait to read it. Yes. So make sure you're doing that.
I'm excited because we've had kind of a couple indie intermissions where we've had some sweeter fantasies. So Assassin of Grins and Secrets, that sounds a little darker.
Sounds a little grim darkish to us, guys. We're not as into green dark, so that'll still be a new experience for us. So make sure you're picking that up and getting reading for it. We still have about 3 more weeks of Greenbone Saga and, a bonus episode that we have announced over on our Instagram. So make sure you're following along there.
Yeah, and also, we are bringing on Fonda Lee and she is going to have to tell me what to do with all these tears.
Where should we put them? Who should suffer?
Have a lot of them bottled up now, and it's becoming a problem.
Agreed. So we will have her on, and then we will be having Sandra of Story Darlings fame on to talk about tomorrow. So make sure you guys are also picking up that book. And we just hope that you are listening along with us. Thank you for listening, and make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Right now, you can rate every episode you want to on Spotify. So please drop us 5 stars there.
And you can comment on the episodes too, which is a great feature. So if you had like a specific thing that you wanted to shout out in an episode, you could do it there.
A great thing to also join in on chats for the episode is to go over to our Discord, where we do have an episode chat. So you can chat with us there. You can also join our Patreon. We have different membership levels there. And look over at ourpod.com for some blog posts that are upcoming, as well as some other things down the line. And make sure you're following us on Instagram and Twitter. Find us on all the social platforms. We're pretty much everywhere. So
everywhere you can find us, we are there.
We are there. We're behind you. No.
MySpace, we're there.
In the post mail, we're there. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, make sure you're following us everywhere, and just, tell a friend to listen. It's a great way to get
word of mouth is a huge thing. We really appreciate you listening, and we really appreciate the shares and just telling people about the podcast. If you liked a specific series that we've covered or specific episode, we love that you would tell your friends.
Yeah, please do. So thank you guys so much, and join us next week to close up on Jade Legacy.
And we'll figure out what to do with my tears, I guess.
The book that broke 1 million hearts, including Hannah and Laura's.
Yeah.
So. How dare you?
Why, Fonda?